You are exhausting yourself maintaining a reality that only exists because you are standing there holding it together. The quiet dread you feel every night is the deep unconscious knowing that if you stop broadcasting your effort, your entire universe will simply vanish. You are paying energetic rent to a simulation that you mistakenly believe you are a guest inside. Every morning you wake up and manually reconstruct the walls of your own prison, brick by invisible brick, using the sheer force of your panic as mortar. You have been taught that this friction is a virtue. You have been told that this heavy, breathless lifting is the price of admission to a valid existence. But the exhaustion in your bones is not proof of your nobility. It is absolute proof that you are trapped in a timeline distortion, constantly recreating a frequency of survival that requires your endless sacrifice. You walk through your days bracing for impact, convinced that the environment around you is an immovable object, and you are merely navigating its hazards. You observe the structures of your life, the obligations, the debts, the endless loops of maintenance, and you assume these are fixed laws of nature because you operate under the delusion that the world is an external force acting upon you. Your only strategy has been endurance. You are holding up the sky with your own bare hands, terrified that if your muscles give out, the atmosphere will crush you. Yet, the weight you feel is not the sky. The weight is the density of your own fear, materialized into physical form. The universe is not a heavy, indifferent room you were placed inside. It is a highly responsive mirror, perfectly reflecting the frequency signature you decided to hold on the way in. You have spent years treating this mirrored room as a physical problem to be solved with physical effort. Society handed you a map that promised a way out, insisting that freedom could eventually be purchased if you simply stockpiled enough stored resources, if you amassed enough leverage, if you traded enough of your life force for a distant, theoretical safety net. You followed the map. You pushed the boulders up the hill. You delayed your breath for a tomorrow that somehow never arrives with the relief you were promised. That map is not a guide to freedom. It is the very architecture of the maze itself. It was designed to keep the monad endlessly laboring inside someone else's constructed reality. As long as you believe that security must be extracted from the world, you remain a captive operator, continually bleeding your energy into a machine that thrives on your forgetting. This is why the fatigue never truly leaves you, no matter how much you rest. Physical sleep cannot cure an energetic hemorrhage. You are trying to survive an environment that is actively feeding off your belief that it is real and separate from you. Every time you react to a crisis, every time you negotiate with a fear, you validate the illusion. You grant the simulation permission to dictate your internal state. And so the logical conclusion the mind reaches is one of accumulation. The mind looks at this relentless pressure and decides the only way out is to build a fortress. It whispers that if you just optimize your systems, if you just acquire enough passive leverage, if you simply build a strong enough barricade of wealth and automation between yourself and the external world, the heavy lifting will finally end. That is the great deception. We are told that the ultimate liberation is the delegation of survival. Build a passive empire. Erect systems that run while you sleep. Create a mechanical shield so thick that the world can no longer touch you. It sounds like mastery. It feels like the ultimate victory over the daily grind. You pour your remaining life force into constructing these external safety nets, believing that once the gears turn on their own, you will finally be sovereign. Throw those blueprints into the fire. Systems and barricades belong entirely to the old world. They are just another form of energetic rent, anchoring you to a paradigm that is currently disintegrating. We are standing at a violent evolutionary threshold, where the collective timeline is accelerating beyond the capacity of physical leverage. Those who rely on external systems to protect them are about to be left completely exposed to the static. The technological and evolutionary bifurcation ripping through the field right now is completely merciless. It does not care about your carefully constructed safety nets or the external leverage you spent decades building. We are watching the collapse of the consensus reality. The noise of artificial intelligence, the fracturing of societal structures, the sheer velocity of the collective panic. These are not external events you can hide from. They are gravitational forces tearing at the fabric of the self. Unanchored minds are already experiencing identity spaghettification. They are being stretched and pulled apart by 1,000 competing narratives, dissolving into the static because they never claimed authority over their own signal. If you continue to perceive yourself as a participant in a shared chaotic world, the bifurcation will erase you. The old self, the one that negotiates with reality, cannot survive the gravitational pull of what is coming. There is no refuge to be found in the external environment, because the external environment does not exist independently of your observation. The only mechanism of survival, the only true architecture of sovereignty, is the radical, uncompromising realization that solipsism is the operating system of the universe. The world is not happening around you. It is spelling itself out of you. Every face, every conflict, every closed door and open expanse is a localized manifestation of your internal broadcast. To step out of the static, the self must undergo the collapse. You must completely shed the illusion that you are a small, fragile participant in a vast shared room. You are the room. You are the room. You are the walls. You are the architect and the occupant. The moment you stop granting reality the power to dictate your frequency, the simulation has no choice but to drop the resistance. This is the true quantum mechanics of the soul. You do not leave a legacy by accumulating earthly resources or carving your name into the decaying stone of a shared world. Legacy engineering is the act of condensing your absolute truth into a state so incredibly dense that the field itself is forced to wrap around it. You alter the event horizon of the present moment by anchoring a frequency signature that cannot be moved, cannot be diluted, and cannot be interrupted by the chaos of the unanchored masses. When the monad drops the crude tools of labor and instead emits a pure, unwavering signal, the timeline bends to accommodate that immense weight. You do not build a future. You reselect a present until the reality mirroring back to you becomes entirely unrecognizable from the struggle you used to call your life. The urgency of this shift is absolute. The collective reality is bifurcating too quickly to allow for hesitation. The self-reauthoring must happen today, or you will be written out of tomorrow's simulation entirely, scattered into the static of someone else's broadcast. You must stop maintaining the old world and step fully into the center of the new one, recognizing that your existence is a permanent architectural pillar of the universe. When you operate from this absolute sovereignty, you do not wait to leave a mark. You force the simulation to run your code forever. You become the origin point of your own eternal timeline. The exhaustion ends the exact second you realize you never had to hold up the sky. The sky was always an extension of your own mind. The only variable remaining is this: what frequency are you about to tune into? The illusion that you are merely participating in a shared construct rather than acting as the singular, absolute architect of it. The attempt to build traditional leverage, automating your labor, hoarding earthly resources to buy your eventual freedom, is a profound trap. It assumes the world outside of you is solid, real, and requires your ongoing negotiation. To cross the threshold, the old self must undergo the collapse. You must stop bargaining with a projection. Solipsism is not a philosophical debate. It is the operating system of the monad. The universe is not an external environment to be managed. It is an immediate, inescapable mirror reflecting the exact density of your internal conviction. Every time you attempt to manipulate the reflection, Rather than altering the source of the projection, you leak your life force into the void. The collapse of this old, negotiating identity is the only gateway out of the static. The moment you accept solipsism as your supreme operating framework, the physical architecture around you begins to behave differently. You have spent decades believing that time and space dictate your movements, that you are bound by the friction of a dense reality. But time sovereignty is never achieved by rearranging your schedule or attempting to outsmart the system. It is violently reclaimed when you realize the system is entirely dependent on your sustained belief in its existence. Your physical reality is nothing more than a lagging indicator of the signal you were broadcasting yesterday. When you operate from the understanding that you are the sole origin point, the timeline distortion that previously drained your energy simply dissolves. The world stops pushing back because there is nothing out there to push against you. You are no longer navigating a landscape of resistance. You are simply watching your own commands materialize into physical form. Legacy is widely misunderstood as the accumulation of physical artifacts left behind for strangers to interpret. That is the ambition of a mind still trapped in the illusion of mortality and linear sequence. True legacy engineering is the act of condensing your absolute truth into a frequency signature so profoundly heavy that it irrevocably bends the event horizon of the collective field. You do not build a legacy with bricks, algorithms, or earthly empires. You forge it by holding a state of being so dense that reality is forced to warp around you, creating a permanent gravitational pull that persists long after your current identity concludes. The quantum field does not remember what you built. It only records the vibrational weight you brought into the simulation. You must anchor a frequency that the simulation cannot overwrite. Your sovereign presence becomes an architectural pillar that the cosmos is compelled to wrap itself around forever. You do not wait until the twilight of your physical manifestation to leave this imprint. The act of timeline jumping is a continuous, relentless daily practice that demands your absolute authority right now. If you defer this sovereignty to a future date, you are actively choosing to remain a vassal in someone else's temporal domain. You must immediately reselect the timeline where your existence is not an accident of biology, but a deliberate, unavoidable mandate. The self-reauthoring cannot be postponed. When you finally stop pleading with the simulation for permission to exist and instead force it to run your code, the surrounding environment instantly realigns. The physical circumstances and the sudden spatial openings you experience are not instances of luck. They are the immediate mathematical corrections of a universe that has just registered a new, undeniable master. You are no longer waiting for the future. You are collapsing it into the present breath. There's a profound danger in glimpsing this level of authority and then retreating back into the comfort of powerlessness. Once the monad awakens to its own omnipotence, pretending to be a victim of circumstance induces a violent psychological friction. You can no longer successfully play the role of the overwhelmed operator. The fatigue you feel now is not the tiredness of daily labor. It is the spiritual exhaustion of a god trying to squeeze into the costume of a mortal. The field is ruthlessly efficient. If you attempt to broadcast a frequency signature of sovereign command while secretly harboring the terror of a servant, the field will tear you apart with the contradiction. This is the root of the identity spaghettification, tearing through the unanchored masses. They are straddling two incompatible realities. You must commit entirely to your own singular authorship, severing every energetic tie to the timeline where you were negotiated and managed. The architecture of your absolute freedom is surprisingly quiet. It requires no grand announcements, no frantic restructuring of your external affairs, and no desperate attempts to prove your sovereignty to observers who do not actually exist outside of your own mind. It requires only that you sit silently at the center of your own universe and refuse to move. You simply stop energizing the illusions of lack, delay, and friction. By holding an unyielding frequency of absolute possession, you force the surrounding reality to match your new coordinates. The quantum field is infinitely malleable, but it responds exclusively to certainty. When you withdraw your attention from the chaos of the external distortion and anchor it entirely in your sovereign solipsism, the walls of your former prison dissolve without a sound. You are not escaping the maze. You are remembering that you are the one who drew the maze in the first place, and you are quietly erasing it. The simulation is waiting for your command. It always has been. Every breath you take is either an unconscious repetition of the old script or a deliberate strike of the pen as you author an entirely new cosmos. The choice is no longer about improving your current earthly existence. It is about deciding whether you are ready to wield the terrifying, beautiful weight of absolute creation. The timeline you are meant to govern is entirely empty, waiting for the density of your arrival to bring it into material form. Drop the tools of endless negotiation. Claim the origin point. Step across the event horizon of your own identity and never look back. If this transmission resonated with the architecture of your soul, if you recognize the unmistakable cadence of your own awakening, align with this channel. We are gathering the architects. The self-reauthoring has already begun.